camps overseas. That's a big problem in several locations overseas. And there's also a terrible problem getting any kind of nuclear or chemical information. I had basically 2 years straight exposure to depleted uranium. And at one point, one of the translators I worked with, her hair started falling out. But I've still never been able to get tested or find out the effects. And I should say that I'm actually working on my master's in history, so that hopefully when my PTSD settles down a bit, I'll be able to teach and make a better life for myself. So I'm not one of these people that just sits there and expects to get fed information. I've been looking for it, and it's very difficult to find. It's very well hidden at National Institutes of Health and the VA websites. You really have to be very looking to find these things. Also, I hear stories from other veterans about veterans that are in certain areas are having specific medical problems. For example, in Wyoming, 26 of their National Guard members were working very close to my camp, Camp Viper, in OEF 1. And 23 of those 26 veterans have died of lung cancer. That's something I would have liked to know, rather than happening to have to stop at the VA to pick up a prescription renewal because I was on my way across country, and find out from one of the nurses that I just happened to get chatting to. I'm happy to say they just finished my screening and I don't have cancer, so I'm lucky that way. The other communication item is problems around the VAMC. Every time I'm there and I find someone doing a good job or something that needs improvement, I fill out the cards. But it doesn't seem to matter how many times you try to address something. The good people never get reported, and the problems never get resolved. For example, the shuttle. In the winter on an icy parking lot, I would challenge any of you to get on a pair of crutches and try to get across that parking lot without a patient shuttle. But you have to request it to be there. I'm not really sure how that's supposed to work, but I'll tell you what, it's not working. And I've fallen, I've fallen, and I'm especially worried about the older veterans. A lot of our Korean World War II veterans are quite elderly, and they're very fragile, and those guys really hurt themselves out there. I know one veteran that's fallen 4 times, and he has some kind of bone problem. And that's just unacceptable. There's no way, if we're going to get medical care, we shouldn't be breaking our neck in a damn parking lot on the way in here. Sorry. And that leads me to my second point, which is common sense. For example, the VA should create some kind of transitional category so veterans don't get stranded just because their paperwork is messed up. I was in that situation happily, mine is resolved. But for example, my next issue is my VA rating. I'm on crutches permanently, and I got rated 10% for being on crutches permanently. That's obviously not correct. And when I applied for an appeal, I filed my notice of disagreement. I was dropped down to priority 8 so that I wouldn't even be seen at the VA. Because at most, I'm not sure about the VA here in this specific situation, but I know other VAs across the country, if you're less than a priority 5, you can't even get in there. And part of that was how I wound up homeless. Some of you may recognize me from Mr. Michel's article in the Buffalo News a few weekends ago. Basically what happened is I had an appendix surgery. The VA refused to see me. I paid $32,000 out of pocket, which was all of my life savings, and I unfortunately had to sell my house at a loss to be able to cover my medical bills. Okay, that was in Reno, but it didn't improve here either. When I got here, I was fighting with the VA here for almost 7 months just to be able to come in and be seen and have someone look at my DD-214 that was corrected by that time, and my file. And I'm very disappointed in the system here, and I would like to work with all of you to change it, because 26% of New York veterans are homeless right now, and that's totally unacceptable. There's no way that there should be a quarter of us out there on the street. We didn't go to Iraq and say, oh, excuse me, can you fill out this paperwork 3 times because we're going to lose it a couple times. Ask you to wait 2 years to get any kind of help, and oh, by come back, that's exactly what we face with the administration. In addition to trying to create a transitional category, I would also like to see some discretion given to the field workers, basically, so that if someone like Chris or myself comes in showing our passports, showing all our campaign medals, we have copies of our records or buddy statements, just to say that we were there and this is what we've done. To have someone who has the authority to say, yes, your DD 214 is screwed up, but we believe you and we're going to help you. Because there's nothing worse than coming back and you know what's right, and you know it's common sense, and the VA intake person understands your situation, but is powerless to do anything. And in the meantime, you're completely locked out of medical care for up to 2 years. Also in the realm of common sense, one problem I run into at the VA here specifically is that no one has actually bothered to read my medical service record. My medical discharge took over 1.5 years because I was fighting to keep my career. And one of the difficulties I've come into is that doctors are randomly substituting some prescriptions I have for cheaper drugs. There is a difference in the active ingredients in these things, and my military doctors worked with me for over 1.5 years, but a physician assistant who's seen me for 5 minutes is suddenly changing them. And that to me is completely inappropriate. Also, I don't think that interns and physician assistants can provide appropriate care, especially in more complicated cases like mine. And I just have to wonder, I was talking to a female veteran just in this hall before we began, about the VA is now referring people to go get things done using their TRICARE insurance, and then they'll pay them back, or to go out for community as fee-based. I'm still owed $7,000 for my medical bills that the VA is supposed to repay, but I've had to give it to Senator Schumer's office because I've been fighting for 2 years. I'm still paying for part of my treatment. And the VA sent me a letter back basically saying that, well, we didn't tell you to go get your appendix taken out, so it's on you. Am I supposed to sit there and let my appendix burst while they figure out the pay for it? That's just common sense. And it's the same with this particular female veteran. They're trying to ask her to go fee-based or use her TRICARE insurance to cover it, and they'll pay her back. And then she hears about a situation like mine. A lot of veterans right now can't afford the co-pays to go get their treatment, even if they have insurance other than the VA, which many veterans don't. And if they're not repaid in a timely manner, I think it's inappropriate to be asking veterans to go out of their own pocket and just hope that the VA pays them back at some time. So going forward, I'd like you guys to know that a lot of veterans in the Buffalo area avoid the medical clinics if they can possibly avoid them. And in a large part, that's because there's a lot of issues with the DD 214s, a lot of issues with nurses and physician assistants getting inappropriate treatment, and it takes 6 months to see a doctor. Or in my case, because of my PTSD, the military recommended that I received psychological counseling and behavioral therapy weekly, but I just managed to see a doctor about 3 weeks ago, and he has 400 other patients. And it took me 16 months just to be able to see someone that could see me maybe once a month, but he can kind of fit me in because he's trying to do me a favor. And I've had doctors come in and tell me that the VA's policy is work unpaid overtime until you burn out or quit. Because these care providers have a high standard for themselves, they don't want the vets to suffer. So I'd like to see us advocating together for a permanent Veterans Affairs budget, for alternative forms of care, chiropractic